Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest Irrigation Association webinar. This one was originally to just focus on the Irrigation Association's new state advocacy program they're looking to roll out here over the next few weeks. However, given the circumstances going on throughout the United States and our public health crisis, we decided to take this opportunity to talk a bit about what the Irrigation Association is doing relative to the COVID-19 public health crisis, how it's affecting all aspects of our industry, and where the Irrigation Association is putting a lot of our efforts. First, my name is John Farner. I am the Government Public Affairs Director with the Irrigation Association. On the line also is Sarah Roth. On our advocacy team, so Senior Manager on our advocacy team. So we're going to be going through, first I'm going to talk a bit about COVID-19, give an outline of where we're seeing our industry in all of this, and then towards the end, after I go through everything with COVID-19, Sarah will spearhead our advocacy efforts, which, as you can imagine, are more important now more than ever. First thing, this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to put that up on our website shortly after it's completed. So if you have missed anything, want to share it with any of your colleagues, this is a free webinar. Please feel free to go ahead and forward the link to whomever would be interested in listening to the webinar. That's fine. We decided not to have a video portion to this, to just have it with slides. I know all of us are getting more used to Zoom and GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar these days with working remotely. However, this one, I want you to have a crystal clear viewpoint of what we're putting up on the screen, so we're going to forego the video component during this webinar. And then finally, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar toolbox. We'll go through questions at the end. Sarah and I would be more than happy to answer anything you have relating to the new state advocacy program, as well as our efforts related to COVID-19. And we'd be more interested here how your business is being affected too, either privately or publicly via the webinar. So feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. Our email addresses will be available to you once we go through all of our slides. With that said, we're going to try to keep this to an hour, maybe a little bit less, depending on the amount of Q&A we get towards the end, and that's fine. May go up to exactly 1 hour. We do need to complete this at exactly 3 o'clock on the East. So just a heads up that we want to definitely get through all the information and then wrap things up to be respectful of your time, as well as our time, moving on to different priorities and different things we're working on permanently relating to the COVID-19 response. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. This, by far, has been the biggest challenge facing our society in any of our generation. It's definitely the biggest challenge facing our full industry, period. This is commercial and residential irrigation, turf landscape irrigation, agricultural irrigation is the biggest challenge facing our economy, facing our business, facing our health. It's just a challenge. In all aspects of the United States infrastructure are being impacted. And you can see this on a daily basis, hourly basis. If you listen or read any portion of the news that's out there, you see the strains that is being put on all components, all parts of our nation's infrastructure. It's not just irrigation, it's everybody. And we just play a part in this big picture with trying to keep our public health front and center, as well as what's left of our economic prosperity moving forward. So with that said, I want to start out a bit from a broad picture and how this whole thing that started about 2 weeks ago is affecting specifically the irrigation industry and in what aspects. First, a little known agency at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has had this, they started this Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency and the Essential Critical Infrastructure Workers. This all started post-September 11th. With the thought in mind, what if we just needed to keep our livelihoods going at the bare minimum and that's it? What would we need? So on the screen you see things such as critical manufacturing, emergency services, our financial institutions, information technology, healthcare, things like that. So in doing so, the CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, this hit them, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but very quickly in putting this critical infrastructure document really into place, moving it forward, more so than they ever wanted to. And so all eyes are now on this document as states make their determinations on what exactly is essential workers as they have their shutdown notices throughout the United States, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Most of them that have made announcements are referencing this document, this website that identifies and spells out the essential critical infrastructure workers throughout the United States. So I'm going to highlight two specific areas that the Irrigation Association alone, now we partner with our allied organizations in all of this, but where we are really focusing on two of our areas, two of the areas that we feel affects the irrigation industry the most. First is food and agriculture. Food and agriculture, I don't want to say this is easy, but it's easy. We need a safe and reliable food supply, a safe and secure food supply in order for all of us to survive, to live, especially during this time, during a public health crisis. And you'll see on the left-hand side of your page is a screenshot of the PDF document that is listed on the CISA's website that goes into the different parts of the food and agriculture supply chain that is of critical importance. And I'll highlight one of the bullet points that says, the very last bullet point, that says employees engaged in the manufacture and maintenance of equipment and other infrastructure necessary to agricultural production and distribution. Okay, this is where agricultural irrigation fits in. This is why we are able to stay open throughout the United States from an agriculture irrigation perspective, period, end of story. We have since thanked the director of the CISA as well as our federal government for recognizing the importance that production agriculture and those sectors that support production agriculture have. So we thank them for recognizing this is a critical component of the United States, recognizing that irrigation is a component of this, that we need the full distribution chain open regarding agriculture irrigation, and that's where this fits in. So whenever we see states make announcements referencing this document, that is where agricultural irrigation fits into the equation. Our biggest hurdle that we've seen throughout the United States has been on what I'm calling commercial and residential irrigation. Now, before I get to the next slide, I want to kind of lay this out for you, big picture. What we're seeing, as you've seen from today, was supposed to be opening day of Major League Baseball, has been shut down. Golf courses, for the most part, throughout the United States, if they have a stay-at-home order, have been shut down. Parks, recreation, youth activities, organizations, they've all been shut down. So while golf courses and et cetera, that's a component of this, where we are really focusing our efforts right now are on the commercial and residential side of the irrigation industry in our advocacy efforts. Now, also a component of this critical infrastructure document is public works. And you'll see here the third bullet point down is workers such as plumbers, electricians, exterminators, and other service providers provide services that are necessary to maintaining the safety, sanitation, and essential operation of residences. Okay. There are areas where landscape services may fit into this document. I'm not going to really focus on that right now, but where we are working with the CISA, and we have sent the director a letter this morning requesting this, we'd like to see irrigation, commercial and residential irrigation professionals fit into this component of public works. We manage the conveyance of water on residential and commercial properties. In many states, we manage backflow prevention devices, which keep a residence's or commercial properties water supply safe for human consumption. And we also ensure there are no leaks and irrigation systems are running properly so the public water supply is not wasting water. That water is available for all humans for human consumption. So that is our focus here on why we are looking at the public works sector and why we should be included in the electricians, plumbers, exterminators. The Irrigation Association is advocating that irrigation professionals be included in this. If we are included in this, and we have gotten direction from the Department of Homeland Security that they are looking to update this critical infrastructure document throughout this public health emergency, that it is not a black and white final document. This is a living, breathing document that can be edited as situations warrant. So we've gone on record requesting that irrigation professionals be included in this section. And as states reference this document, this will help the commercial and residential irrigation professionals argument that we are part of the critical infrastructure of the United States. Now, in all of our documents, all of our letters, all of what we're doing throughout the United States in our communicating with public officials, we put public health first and foremost. And in states where they've determined that landscape services / irrigation is not an essential service, we put public health first, and we are telling our folks to adhere to the state and local regulations being put in place for public health. Where irrigators can go to work, irrigation professionals can go to work, we are asking that those professionals follow CDC as well as local and public health guidelines. There are stories about some landscape professionals, I don't know if it's irrigation specific, but showing up with 7 people in one truck. That should not be the norm. We need to follow public health guidelines and putting everyone's safety first, and that is really where the Irrigation Association is imploring its members, as well as telling public health officials and the government that we are following public health guidelines set forth by the CDC as well as state and local officials. Now, what has the Irrigation Association done so far in terms of resources? So we've built out this website, irrigation.org/COVID-19-resources, that whenever we see any kind of federal documents, state documents, we put together advocacy resources, we write letters, we put them up on this website for folks to see and use. So you can see the shell of letters that we're doing that advocate landscape services should be defined as essential services. We are advocating for landscape irrigation during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then I'll go through some letters specifically that we've sent to different states, as well as you'll see a link there to the CISA Director Krebs advocating for irrigation services defined as essential services. And in that letter, we also highlight and thank the director for the inclusion of food and agriculture within the critical infrastructure document and highlight the irrigation technology's role in ensuring we have a safe and reliable food supply for all of Americans, especially during situations like we're in right now. We've also put together a LinkedIn resource page. You'll see right there, every time that I personally see something pop up in the states that affects landscape irrigation, agricultural irrigation, every time the Irrigation Association puts together a letter or we put together documentation that advocates for irrigation during this public health crisis, we push that out to the LinkedIn group right away. So if you're not a part of the LinkedIn group, or your colleagues, your friends, your coworkers are not part of the LinkedIn group, I ask, please, please, please have them join this LinkedIn group. I envisioned this group to not just be the Irrigation Association staff putting information out there, but it's a way for members and those that are involved in the irrigation trade, whether it's ag or landscape irrigation, to post questions up there and share information. What are you doing to tell your employees to follow best practices as outlined by the CDC or public health? When you're questioned about whether or not irrigation is an essential service in one county, what are you saying? Things like that. So I really would like to see more activity. We have almost 100 members, as you can see in that LinkedIn group right now. It's a very easy way for the Irrigation Association to put up information quickly right away. But it's also a way that I hope Irrigation Association members can come together and learn from one another as well. So I ask you, when you do promote this LinkedIn page, ask your coworkers and colleagues, and you join this group, please become active. Please ask questions, comment. I, along with other Irrigation Association staff, are on this site regularly, in this group regularly. We look for comments, we look for ways to get information out there and to interact with irrigation professionals on a regular basis. So what are we seeing in the states? Currently, we've estimated around 21 states have some sort of stay-at-home order in effect, okay? Now, the federal government is not regulating any stay-at-home order. President Trump has been very crystal clear. There is no national stay-at-home order in effect. This is all being run at the state and local level. And even in states like Florida, Governor DeSantis has told his residents that any stay-at-home orders will be enforced at the county and municipal level. So what you're seeing in Tampa or Orange County or the surrounding areas in Central Florida, you're seeing stay-at-home orders come into effect right now. And where you'll see this affect a lot of, the news would be the area surrounding Disney World, for example, that the two counties that Disney World resides in now stay-at-home orders that go past what Disney originally announced would be their closure dates, which means they have to stay closed for longer than what they have to be. So that's where the local enforcement is really coming into play. Also, what we're seeing is states create an outline of how the stay-at-home order will be. Some are more specific than others. Pennsylvania is very specific. If you go to that executive order, there is a link to a spreadsheet that is about, I want to say 6, 7, 8 pages long that really goes into detail specific trades. And it has in there, it's almost like an Excel type spreadsheet where it has may stay open, must close. And it goes into detail what can stay open, what must close. Landscape services are listed in there as can stay open. But other types of retail establishments must close. It can go into detail as far as dry cleaning and things like that. So it's very prescriptive in that manner. Other states, like one of our problem states we've been seeing, like Ohio, is broad. And what you're seeing is, let's say, building, construction, and other trades, including but not limited to plumbers, electricians, exterminators, et cetera, or other essential services similar, can stay open. Well, that doesn't provide much direction for irrigation specifically. And specific that those irrigation where you're providing needed maintenance for a leak or irrigation where you're working on a backflow prevention device. And so we've asked for clarity for in these states where we see things as being very vague, saying irrigation should be included and here's why, for public health and safety reasons. And in some instances, we get no response. In Ohio, we got a response that was even less clear than what was listed out in the executive order. In states like Michigan, we've had no response. So it really depends on the state by state. And in a state like California, where we had questions early on regarding manufacturing, regarding distributors, regarding contractors, we're seeing different counties like Santa Monica be very, very, very strict, where landscape contractors are being pulled over or approached on site by local law enforcement and told to go home, where in other counties they are listed out as being able to do work. And that's all based on interpretation of the statewide order. So even though states are making their blanket assessments on what are essential services and what are not, localities can become even more strict. And we're seeing that in Massachusetts as well, where Massachusetts actually outlined landscape services as an essential service. So those that maintain, those that install any part of the landscape and commercial residential instances can do work. But again, at the local level, in some instances, they're being told to go home. No, they may not do work. So it's a very difficult and fluid situation to manage. We're trying our best, like I said, to work from the top bottom to have the Department of Homeland Security become a bit more prescriptive in what can and cannot be done. Again, the Irrigation Association is looking out for irrigation professionals specifically here, all the while working very close with our partners at the National Association of Landscape Professionals, American Hort, et cetera, promoting the general green industry as well and the ability to go out and do work while practicing guidelines set forth by the CDC and local and state public health officials. In addition to all of this, what we're seeing as well is a federal response. And for those that saw in the news early this morning, the Senate passed the largest ever economic recovery bill since the beginning of our republic by a vote of 96 to nothing. It is now over to the House right now. The IA is going through this right now, looking at what it entails. It goes into everything where there's elements of agriculture that is included in this economic recovery. This bill is what is included for the $1,200/$500 for dependents checks that folks are getting in the mail, beginning in 3 weeks, from what I've been told. by folks at the White House. So all of that is included in this bill. It is a large economic recovery bill. We're going through that to see where the irrigation industry companies are affected by this and what would be interested in this. So we're going through that right now. I hope to have the document you see on the left, which goes through phase 1 and phase 2, being the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act, which was signed into law on March 6th. In fact, those of you who were at the fly-in, this passed Congress while we were in D.C. for our fly-in, as well as the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which was passed and enacted into law on March 18th of 2020. This is phase 3. So this really, while phase 1 focused primarily on CDC response, vaccine development, appropriations, it's focused on the health component of this. Telehealth, telemedicine, things like that. It really focused on the health. The Families First focused on the Family Leave Act, sick time related to coronavirus, things like that. And the document, which is up on our COVID-19 resource page, goes into detail about what was in each bill as well. So those who are interested in what was in each of those bills, we've prepared a document on this for both the IA as well as the National Groundwater Association, who we also represent, for our members to use for information on what's in those bills, and that will be updated with phase 3 once we're able to do that later on today. So with all of that said, we're about 20 minutes in. I want to go ahead and throw this over to Sarah Roth, who's going to go talk about the State Advocate Program, and then what she's through, I'll kind of circle back and close any loops that we may have left open regarding COVID-19, and then I hope to really have any kind of Q&A. Just please type in a question you may have regarding the COVID-19 response, any suggestions you have, any questions you have, as well as any questions you have regarding our State Affairs Program, State Advocate Program as well. So Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, John. Gosh, these current events really highlight the value of state advocacy. I'd like to thank you all for calling in today. We really appreciate you all being here. So diving right into the purpose of the call, as our department has been building out this State Advocate Program, we really wanted to make sure that we were incorporating your feedback, our members' feedback, and giving potential volunteers the opportunity to contribute to the development of the program, in order to make it a success and to make sure that we get as many volunteers participating as we can. So to talk a little bit about the program itself, our goals for the program are to grow the IA's state advocacy by engaging our members in the states, as well as expanding grassroots activism within the IA's membership. And specifically, what this would consist of is tracking new legislative and regulatory developments in the states and proactively introducing legislation when supported by the state affiliate, when that is appropriate. And to that end, our member volunteers would work with IA staff, and that would really consist of myself and John in the Government and Public Affairs Department, as well as the IA's Government Affairs Committee. So diving right into the details of the program and a little bit about the program lifecycle. So right now we're looking at putting out a short online application that you could fill out if you were interested in participating in the program. IA staff would review the application and work with our Government Affairs Committee to review applications. And then the applications would be approved by our Government Affairs Committee chair. And we're looking at approving up to 2 participants per state. And this is really just to make sure that the program remains nimble and is manageable, because if we make it to our goal of having all of our states represented, we don't want to have too many people that we're having to coordinate. But in terms of the term itself of the volunteer position, we're looking at participants serving 2-year terms and being able to extend those in 2-year increments. And in terms of the responsibilities, we're looking at I think this goes without saying, but we would, expect our volunteers to commit to keeping on top of legislative and regulatory developments in your states. And in terms of communications, what that would look like would be a monthly check-in call with an IA staff member, like I said, either myself or John at the moment, And that would be while the state legislature is in session, as well as additional calls on an as-needed basis, in the event that a piece of legislation is introduced in a state that would affect the irrigation industry or irrigation members, then we would want to, coordinate some kind of response to that and work with our members in the states and our state advocates to work on that response. And then finally, we would want to coordinate quarterly conference calls to get all of our state advocates on the call together and really look at, what are we seeing any trends in the states? How do we want to coordinate response? What can we learn from other members that are on the call that have gone through, that have seen this legislation before, and how they've, responded to that policy proposal. And really, when we look at the benefits of participating in this program, the benefits to us are very clear. We definitely want to engage our members and expand our grassroots advocacy in the states. It's a positive for us and for our advocacy team. But for you, it's an opportunity to contribute to the industry, to represent your business interests and the industry at the state level, and to even get involved in, coming to the IA's fly-in and meeting with your representatives as well. And it's an opportunity to potentially participate in webinars and events, talking about what the IA is doing on the state policy side of things. We are going to be looking at how we can incorporate some special sessions on state advocate efforts, at the annual irrigation show potentially, as well as incorporating information on, our state advocacy efforts at the IA fly-in that happens every year. So that's a little bit about the program as we have built it out so far. And, coming full circle, the intent of the call is really to incorporate your feedback into this program. And, particularly if you're interested in participating as a volunteer, I'd like to know, hear from you, is there anything missing from this program? Or is there anything that we could add to the program that would provide more value to our members who are interested in participating? And John, do we have a way to see if anybody wants to chime in?
Yeah, so I have so I want to circle back here real quick, and then
Yes.
I will answer any questions that folks may have. And please, if you have any questions regarding the State Advocate Program or regarding the COVID-19 response from the Irrigation Association, please feel free to ask them now. I think the outline that Sarah gave was great in going into detail about the program, what's expected, things like that. And I just want to highlight what we're seeing throughout the United States right now, and the conversations that we've been having with our state advocates, our state partners. It really highlights this importance. And the Irrigation Association is in a pretty unique spot here, where we represent manufacturers, distributors, dealers, contractors, and folks like that, where we can have different perspectives brought forth to different levels of state government. So whether it's municipal level, state level, et cetera. And we are not able to go ahead and know exactly and be in the states and know exactly what's going on at all possible times in the state. So we really see this as a two-way street, where, as Sarah mentioned, if folks on the ground hear something, to have a formal way of the IA getting a response back of saying this is happening in our state, to let us know, and then vice versa. If we see something, we want to have a point of contact to go to and say, something is happening in your state, we need help on this. First, what do you think? And go about it in that manner. We love partnering in states with our partners, state associations, folks like that, and really hope to continue to do so through this type of partnership as well. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as well. So I'm going to see if there are any questions.
Yeah, and John, it might actually be helpful to clarify that we're not necessarily limiting this to people who have years of experience working in government affairs, right? We're looking for
Yes.
members. We're going to that are interested in getting involved in advocacy efforts, and we're also looking at potentially building out some onboarding training or providing some kind of
Mhm.
continuous training for our members who are interested and who join the program. And looking at what would that entail? What kind of training or information that we could provide to you would be helpful if you don't necessarily have a background doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to answer a question that was asked in relation to the point you just brought up, Sarah. Some states, regarding irrigation specifically, are much more organized than others. And in some states, there is a state irrigation association, or even a state ag irrigation association. In other states, there might be a nursery and landscape association that is more of an umbrella organization. And in some states, an irrigation association that focuses on irrigation contractors that may not be as organized as other states. So we really see this partnership that's available to really hopefully incorporate those existing operations as well, those existing entities. So, for instance, I know Jim Laura, you're on regarding California Ag Irrigation Association. I see that being the natural fit. So even though we may have one person, whether it's you or it's Paul or somebody else in California, would be kind of our quote point of contact, the CAIA would be a definite part of this. It's always been the goal of the IA to not go into a state by ourselves. Whenever possible, we would like to partner with those state organizations and even have logos at the top of any kind of correspondence where it could be the Irrigation Association and the Ohio Irrigation Association, or the Irrigation Association and the California Ag Irrigation Association together advocating, because state officials really respond better to state organizations than national organizations. So it benefits the full industry. It benefits the IA having that kind of partnership with the state associations. In states where those associations don't exist, that's fine too. That's okay. And the Irrigation Association can work with a key volunteer or volunteers, depending on what sector you're from, whether it's ag or landscape, to focus specifically on those issues and advocate on behalf of the state industry from the Irrigation Association's perspective. But it's always our goal to incorporate the state associations as much as possible. There's another question about writing. What we're doing, so this this webinar was scheduled, gosh, Sarah, like 5-6 weeks ago, way
Yeah.
before anything to
Months
do
ago.
with COVID-19. So we are in the process of putting together our outline and kind of the membership to a part of the state advocate program. And we're going to be pushing that out to everyone that's on this webinar, as well as anybody else who may be interested in making that available on our website as well, for folks to learn more about the program, like a one-pager, learn more about it, what it entails. So everything that Sarah went through is going to be in writing and available. It would have been available by today, but life gets in the way sometimes, and these interesting times are a bit too interesting for all of us. So that will be available, but we just want to take this opportunity to outline the program, get any feedback you may have, similar to the state association question, to make sure we incorporate that in our outline as well. I know there's a question about who to contact. That will also be included. Right now, you'll see on the screen both my and Sarah's email addresses on there. We are the advocate team of the Irrigation Association. So whenever you see any kind of issue in a state that may be either positive or negative to the industry, please let us know. We do our best with our own tracking services to know what's going on in different states, but the closer you are to the issue, the better. And we don't always know what's going on always throughout the United States. A few years ago, I'll use this as an example. A few years ago, there was an area in California where that prohibited the sale of a municipality, like a local city-level municipality, banned the sale of irrigation sprinklers in that municipality in California. And it was done basically one municipality meeting, and in the dark of night, and all of a sudden the next day, this was basically law in that area. And the next day, I was getting phone calls saying, "Hey, why didn't we know about this?" There is no way that we can know what every single municipality is doing before it's done without any kind of help from the local level. We don't have that kind of capability, that tracking service. We just don't know. And even with the help of all of our volunteer efforts, it's still going to be very difficult to know exactly what happens in every single level of all parts of government. But hopefully through this type of organization that we've outlined, the better off we'll be. And using this as an example in the different states, we can be a bit more organized in how we are advocating on behalf of the irrigation industry within each state through this type of program, where we can have a point of contact in each state to work with to really advocate and to feed information back to us about conversations that are occurring within different gubernatorial offices and things like that. So I'm going through the different questions here. Right now, as far as state and federal representatives, right now we're really focusing this on state level first. We hope to build that out to the federal side and build relationships with our federal representatives as an arm of this program. Other organizations call it like a key contact program, where we help individuals really cultivate a relationship with their federal elected officials. Our federal advocacy on the grassroots level has really been focused on our fly-in and then subsequently following up with those meetings back in the states. But the more organized we are on a grassroots level with the states, this really helps build our federal capacity as well. So the question of ag versus landscape, we want to take any and all volunteers who are interested, and we are not going to put any kind of pressure on individuals to be experts in advocacy, to have a degree in political science and look at what regulations are where. We really want you to view this from your own personal perspectives, whether you're an irrigation contractor, distributor, manufacturer, dealer on the agricultural side, consultant on the agricultural side, manufacturer on the agricultural side. If you work for a turf landscape manufacturer in Arizona or California, I'm not going to expect you to know the ins and outs or even be interested in advocating and looking out for those affecting the agricultural side of the industry. So we don't really need, having more than one is okay in each state, and one ag, one landscape, or even a small committee. It's really, that's what we're looking to build out, is that kind of thing. And the IA does have tools available that we're going to use in terms of tracking. However, like what we're really looking for on your end is really, sometimes businesses hear things just through the aspect of being involved in the trade in their areas quicker than we can hear things nationally. A lot of the times we're going to see things first and push it off to you. But sometimes you're going to say, hey, my municipality is thinking about doing this, or my state is thinking about doing this, just because you heard it through the trade grapevine in your area. So that's where we're really looking to get that kind of information, and the tracking that we see, pushing that out regularly to this organized group of individuals is we're looking to do that as well. So back to the state association relationship, whenever we have a good relationship with the state association, I see this all working together. So say we have an advocate in a state that we work closely with. Again, we see value in partnering with the state associations as much as possible. So say there's an advocate in a state that is really involved with the irrigation association, but not so much their state landscape contractors association or their state, farm bureau or someone like that. We see value in cultivating that relationship where we may work things out first with our state advocate in the state, but then also reach out to the state association saying, hey, what is your opinion on this? Where do you stand on this? The Irrigation Association is not interested in going into states where we are at odds with a state association. That does nobody any good. We want to see us as a natural partner within each state on issues affecting the industry. So, sorry, that was a lot. Anything I said? Do you have anything to add to that, Sarah? And what I know I'm reading the questions. You can't see those, but do you have any questions or anything to add to that?
No, I feel like you're covering it pretty well. Yeah, these are
Okay.
all questions, and they spark, questions for us as well, and things that we can do to build out the program even further and make sure that we're covering these bases. So these are great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that was the goal. Original goal of this webinar was to have it be, hey, this is what we're thinking, lay it out. How can we make it better, and what would work for the industry as well? So I think I went through all of the questions to best of my ability, at least. Know that for those who are interested but are hesitant to think, geez, does this mean I didn't know every single bill is being introduced in California or Texas or Nebraska or wherever? The answer is no. We just want someone that loves the industry, that's willing to put some volunteer time into this, and is interested in advocacy and how the industry is regulated, and to work with us on that. That is really what we're looking to do, and that can work with state associations to build up some grassroots organization. That's really what we're looking to do here. It is much better to have the state advocates speak in the states than it would be for someone like me or Sarah or someone else from the national office to come in from Washington, D.C. We want to add value, not be the first point of contact. We want to add value to the arguments and the reasonings that you all are making in the states, rather than have us be the go-to person. That's not the role of the National Association, in our opinion. So I don't see any more questions. Sarah, do you have anything to add before we wrap things up a little early?
No, I think it's always good to give people back their time. So we
Yeah. And I'll end with COVID-19. I know you're going to see some more things come out. It's going to get, in my opinion, worse before it gets better out there. In a state like Michigan that came out today and verbatim said landscape services are not essential, know that the national associations, your state associations, are working on this. And it was a pretty emotional time last week because this hit our industry like a ton of bricks, whether you're in agricultural or commercial residential landscape turf irrigation, that we are well aware of everything going on, and we're doing our best to add value to the public health efforts as well as the national economic efforts. It's a tough task, and it's a tough task not just for our little industry here. It's a tough task nationally. And what we hope is groups like the Irrigation Association, and I know your state associations feel the same way, that we're gonna be there for you through this process, the ups and downs, advocate on behalf of you, and then be there at the end as well, and rebuild this industry back to where it once was. So that's really the role we see in all of this, and we can pick up things like this state advocate program and build it out and be successful when COVID-19 is in our distant memory, and we're having our kids and grandkids on our lap tell them stories about how we went through all of this back in 2020. So, like I said, this is being recorded. We'll try to get this up on our website as quickly as possible, at least on our YouTube site, and then subsequently the Irrigation Association's website for you to view. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me and or Sarah. And again, thank you so much for taking time today. I know it's a tough time for all of us to work with us on making our advocacy efforts better. And with that said, thank you all very much, and we'll let you know next time we all get together. Appreciate it.